Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about India's G20 presidency. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday unveiled India's logo and theme for its presidency of G20. India's G20 logo juxtaposes planet Earth with the Lotus, India's national flower, and the theme is One Earth, One Family, One Future. Now, India will assume the presidency of the grouping of world's 20 largest economies on 1st of December for 1 year. This offers a unique opportunity to India to contribute to the global agenda on pressing issues of international concern and importance as well. G20 is the premium forum for international economic cooperation, representing approximately 85% of the global GDP and 75% of the global trade and about two-thirds of the world's population as well. So during the course of this G20 presidency, India is expected to host about 200 meetings in 32 different sectors in multiple locations across the country. So what will be the key priorities during India's G20 presidency and how this year-long dialogue will impact the way forward in facing various challenges which the world or the countries across various continents are facing right now. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us Mr. Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation, here in the studio. Welcome, Mr. Bansal. We are also joined by former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, who is with us, and Professor Harshvi Pant is also joining us. He is Vice President Studies and Foreign Policy with ORF. Welcome, both of you gentlemen as well. I'll begin with you, Mr. Bansal, and let's first start by understanding, 2-3 aspects here. One, why is it so significant about, India gaining the presidency this year from 1st of December onwards, the G20 presidency?
See, firstly, from 1st December to 30th November will be the president of G20. And G20, as you know, controls 85% of global GDP. In fact, that's a very substantive sum. Virtually all the trade that actually happens in the world is within the G20. And the globe at this point of time is passing through a very, very turbulent phase. As you know, Russia-Ukraine war has actually created issues. And the current G20 summit, which is going to take place in Bali itself, there are a lot of apprehensions whether Zelensky will speak virtually or not. In July, when they had a foreign ministers summit, both Russian and Ukrainian foreign ministers participated. Now, once we take over, that will be the post-pandemic, post-conflict reconstruction phase. In fact, the globe is passing through an economic crisis. And I think G20 is primarily an economic grouping, as you know. It basically will looking at economic recovery and things like that. And that is where I think at this crucial junction, India's chairmanship will allow it to charter a particular path. And it also allows India to invite some of its friends to participate into G20, besides the 19 countries and the EU, which are partners of G20, like as you know, that we are likely to call Bangladesh, Egypt, etc., and some of other countries which we have already named. So that gives us that. And you will be the hub of activity, because that 1 year presidency, there will be so many activities which will be associated with G20s, the private sector, public sector, different fields, those all activities will be there. So India would be the hub. The global community, most of the important communities will be coming, and there are of course large number of activities which take place outside the government, that is private sector, NGOs, etc. So there will be so many activities that will be taking place in India. And that makes it very, very important, because the global focus would be on India during this particular period, and whatever we do or we don't do will be actually projected in the international media and will be talked of.
Okay. Let me bring in, Mr. Prabhu Dayal here as well. Mr. Dayal, this, as Mr. Bansal was referring to, and I was also pointing out, primarily sort of a forum for economic cooperation, around approximately 80% of the GDP, around 75% of the trade, the two-thirds of world's population as well. That means G20 is really significant. But the key question here is that there are, various issues on which even the G20 has not been able to form a sort of a consensus or move ahead. So can this period be considered the time when, under India's presidency, those gaps can be plugged further, given the stature which India has acquired in diplomatic circles or economically speaking as well on the global stage?
Well, you know, these gaps, as you call them, present a lot of challenges for us. Our presidency comes with lots of challenges. But then, as they say, with each challenge, there comes an opportunity. So, India's presidency of the G20 gives us an opportunity to provide a leadership role to the world. You know, the foreign policy of India has been evolving to take leadership roles on the global stage. And the G20 presidency offers us a unique opportunity in this regard to contribute to the global agenda on pressing issues of international importance. Now, what are the pressing issues? There are many. Of course, Mr. Bansal outlined some of those. The G20, as he pointed out, is an economic organization. It is not meant to be a political forum at all. But it has been impacted by the rise in international tensions due to the Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the G20 is a divided house today. And already India has sent out the message of oneness, you know, one world, one family, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, one future. The oneness has been emphasized. So India has the challenge of reunifying the G20. Of course, it's not going to be easy. The divisions run very deep between, for instance, the Western countries on one hand and Russia, China on the other. But if there's any country which can lead the G20 at the moment, it is India, because India has pursued an independent foreign policy, and you need a country like India to lead the G20 at this time.
Okay. Professor Pant, one earth, one family, and one future, the theme which Mr. Dal was also referring to, sort of an indication as to what India is pointing towards in terms of what it sets to achieve in the next 1 year. And also, when we're talking about the challenges here, the global challenges, what would be the key ones which you need to be addressed right away or, to be discussed?
I think, both the questions are connected in some ways, because ultimately it's the fragmentation of the global order and fragmentation of the multilateral order that is at stake here. And we have seen how major powers have lost their ability to lead on major global issues. You have platform after platform, multilateral institution after institution that is crumbling under the weight of their own internal contradictions. So here, I think G20 presents an opportunity as it brings together key economies, but also key players on the global stage, to come together and sort some of these things out in a manner that perhaps is the need of our times. Because I think, fragmentation, of course, has its own logic. It leads to its own sets of consequences. But ultimately, the challenges that the world is facing require this oneness that India is emphasizing, whether it is climate change, whether it is the strategic economic decoupling that is happening around the world in different phases, whether it is the global governance deficit agenda. I think on issue after issue, we have seen how world international community as such no longer is able and willing to come together. So perhaps by emphasizing this oneness, India is making an important point that is the biggest issue on the agenda, that we just have to decide whether we want to manage these challenges or not. Even Ukraine and Russia conflict, if you look at what the kind of impact it has had on fuel prices, on global economy, on the kind of inflationary pressures that the world is witnessing, the the brunt is being borne by the most vulnerable, by the poorest of the poor countries. And for these biggest economies of the world not to take an initiative in resolving some of those problems is actually being irresponsible. So I think India is making a very important point, and will be making an important point, that India can act as a bridge between the developed and the developing world, between the countries, among the countries that are represented on the stage. And with all the challenges, with all the problems, perhaps we are now at a point where we cannot really look away from the problems that are being borne by the poorest and by some of the most weakest countries in the world. So I think that challenge is what India will try to fill, that void India will try to fill. And I think the message that India is sending by its symbol, by its slogan of oneness, that is, I think, a very important signal in and of itself as to what India's priorities are going to be.
Okay, Mr. Bansal, apart from the message which we're trying to send through the theme and the logo as well, both symbolic of what kind of feelings with which India is assuming the presidency, what is it that India brings to the table as the president of G20 for this year, given the fact that these are humongous challenges post-COVID world? You refer to, economic challenges, the conflict which is ongoing, and there are other various issues as well which concern the member nations and the invitees as well.
See, if there is any country which is most suited to meet these challenges, it is India. It's the fastest growing large economy of the world. So if there is a country which can meet these challenges, it's India. So we bring to the table our expertise in certain fields. We have actually made a huge, today sustainable development is a very important fact. And I think the huge transition that India is making as far as green energy is concerned, we have done phenomenally well. And one very important factor which I would like to focus on is, which just started in Indonesian presidency, is R20, bringing different religions, faiths together. Now this is something which is not pure economics, but they have tried to do something. They have tried to have an R20 conference, which they probably want to take it forward to India, and that will be the time, because Indonesians have just started it at the end of it. Because most of the conflicts today that we are seeing have, many of them have their genesis in religion. So to bring different faiths, followers of different faiths together and have a dialogue and between them is a very, very important facet. So that comes to it. But as far as other factors are concerned, of course, there are governmental agencies. In fact, you're looking at infrastructural financing. There are a lot of issues which will come up because economy is slowing down and there are huge challenges. So we'll have to work out ways and means how the international trade, international economy continues to grow. And as I said, being the fastest growing large economy, we are in a position to do that. Of course, we are also trying to get newer members to come and actually participate, those which we feel have huge potential, the countries which are continuing to grow despite these challenges and which have huge populations like Nigeria, Bangladesh, Egypt. These are the countries which we are trying to bring them. And in fact, we also, like somebody said, the world is divided as far as Russia, Ukraine. We probably tread the middle path. So we are that way also suited. And I think India could probably at some stage take initiatives to bridge the divide that exists between the world. So that's where I think by our message of the world is one is actually very, very important. And that's where we can bridge the people, and India's traditional values can help them to bridge the divide that exists between.
Ambassador Dayal, one more aspect of it, and let's look at it from India's perspective also. We have a very renowned standing diplomatically as well at various other international forums. When we're talking about G20, one question which is often asked, and of course, there will be various opportunities in various sectors with interaction with different governments, private sector from other countries as well. But taking all that in consideration, what is in it for us?
A lot. There is a lot in it for us. There are going to be around 200 meetings which will be hosted by us in different parts of the country. So this will be a tremendous opportunity for us to showcase the totality of India. It is perhaps this which is the most attractive part of India's chairmanship of G20 because in very difficult times, India has been able to do well. And this aspect will be showcased when these meetings are held in different parts of the country. Now, there are several challenges which are being confronted by the world. We spoke about the Russia Ukraine conflict, which is very divisive, and where India has been calling for diplomacy and dialogue. But there are also related problems, the energy crisis, the food shortage leading to rising global prices, inflation, then the slowing down of the economies of various countries. These are very serious problems which are not going to be wished away. But then India has come out as a country which has done well even in times of such crisis. And that is why the IMF managing director paid a huge compliment to India when she said that India deserves to be called a bright spot on this otherwise dark horizon because it has been a fast growing economy even in these very troubled times. She also emphasized, things like structural reforms undertaken by India, the success of digitalization, the success of India in terms of solar and other forms of renewable energy. So these are all things which the G20 needs to emulate and also needs to showcase for the developing countries, the larger world. And this is why India is very well poised. And there's a lot in it for India to showcase its achievements and present them to the world and really present itself as a true leader in this hour of crisis.
Okay. Professor Pant, we've been talking about issues which are really important, post-pandemic recovery, economic recovery specifically, and, the supply chain issues. On the other hand, regional and global security concerns as well, infrastructure being one. But another issue which seemed to be, and it is being discussed right now at COP27, that's the issue of climate change. That also is something wherein, forums like G20 will perhaps have to come up with a clearer agenda. Do you think that would be an overarching issue during this year?
It should be, and I think the conversation in the climate change discourse and debate at the moment is a very clear divide between the developed and the developing world, where the developing world is asking for greater finance for green technology, and I think India has been a long-term champion of this, and especially at this time when economic growth across the world is slowing down, when we are almost going back on our commitments. A number of countries are going back on their commitments on climate change, when the fossil fuel is back in action, back in circulation in a big way, where the reliance on fossil fuels is back. I think this is the time when if climate agenda has to be addressed. And remember, climate change adversely affects, again, some of the most vulnerable countries in the world that do not have a voice in major platforms. So I think G20 as a group of countries of developed and the developing world, India is certainly well poised to make that point again, that the developed world cannot shun its responsibility or when it comes to financing of green technologies, when it comes to funding green technologies in the developing world, when it comes to financing the green transition. And that's a point that India has been making repeatedly now, and India has been at the forefront of that. So I would be very surprised if India does not take a leadership position on this issue in G20, and I have all the reason to believe it would, because I think it is at the core of a large part of the conversation from some of the most vulnerable developing countries' perspective. And India has said that it would champion, it would reflect, and it would underscore the challenges that some of the most vulnerable in the international system are facing. India wants to become their voice, and this is you won't get a better platform than G20. So I think certainly climate change agenda and the way the developed world has not taken effective action so far, and also the future trajectory of their commitment is under question increasingly because of Ukraine and because of economic slowdown. All those questions will be under the scanner, and India, I think, will raise them, and will raise them with great vigor at the G20.
Okay. Mr. Bansal, vis-a-vis climate change, do you agree that we have a lot to show to the world in terms of how to tackle various challenges which we are facing right now. But more than that, the question is to make others understand that, yes, this is the path or this is a better path to take.
See, there is no doubt. I think the transformation to green energy that we have made is significant. In fact, I was in Doha Forum and John Kerry specifically mentioned India has taken huge strides as far as this. The amount of solar panels that have been put up, the wind energy, green hydrogen, and these are some of the focus areas. If you see the MEA's statement, which was issued on 13th September, they said this is one of the focus areas, and also the fact that International Solar Alliance is being invited, one of the organizations that is being invited by India to join during its presidency is important. And the amount of transformation as far as solar energy and wind power is concerned that we have made, I think it's for globe to see and emulate. So we have a lot to offer. We have started green hydrogen pilot projects at different places. So I think as far as sustainable growth is concerned, as far as alternative energy is concerned, I think we have a lot to showcase to the world, and world can learn a lot from India.
Okay. To sum it up, Mr. Bansal, climate change, sustainable development, economic challenges, the conflict, and of course the security-related issues as well. What else? What else are we looking at? Because it's an year-long thing. It will be a huge bouquet.
See, if you look at it, what they say is equitable and sustainable growth. They talk for life, that is lifestyle for environment, women's empowerment, the issues that they are actually trying to flag, digital public infrastructure, which is again our very strong point where I think we can show to the world the amount of digital payments that are taking place in India, I think can be a role model for the entire world. Then of course health, agriculture, education, skill mapping, there are a lot of things, climate financing, because if you want people to cut down on their emission, you need to have certain mechanism for financing, because as of now it's actually still peanuts that are being given. So a lot of global food security at this point of time when people are talking of energy because of the conflict, but now the next crisis which is looming large is going to be food security. If this Russia-Ukraine conflict continues, the food security is already becoming an issue. The prices have started going up, so that will again be there. We are also talking about green hydrogen, disaster risk management. So these are some of the focus areas. I think the MEA statement is very, very comprehensive, which talks about various areas that we are going to see, developmental cooperation, and of course, very important factor, fight against economic crimes, which we have not been doing it. I think that is something where I think the global cooperation is required to track them.
Indeed. And security and cyber security, of course, will again be the cornerstone of the discussions there. Thank you so much, Mr. Bansal, Ambassador Prabhudas, and Professor Harsh Pant as well for sharing your views and insight as our experts were pointing various themes or various aspects which will be the key priority discussion areas during India's G20 presidency, which begins on 1st of December. The theme and the logo has been unveiled. The theme would be One Earth, One Family, One Future, a clear indication of what India's thoughts are as a president of G20 for the next 1 year to tackle various challenges. We'll keep a close watch on all the developments there and keep on bringing you detailed analysis. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.